I know it's been a while since I posted up a video. Not like you guys are, anybody's clamoring to see me do anything anyways. Just something I do for fun, but I haven't done anything to the bike since the last video I posted. I've just been pretty busy with something else going on that I haven't been able to do a lot of motorcycle stuff. Just my time's been occupied with something that it's going to be worth it in the end. So anyways, yes, the last video I posted up about after the last time I'd raced it and toasted the clutch and went through everything on that. And then I had changed the exhaust up because of how the exhaust was set up on the bike. It was just a little too far out to the left side and a little bit too low. It wasn't any lower than the bottom of the oil pan, but with that height and then just, you know, it was like an inch too far out to the side, that when I would turn at the, you know, we have a left turn shutdown at the end of our track, and it's rough, and it would hit bumps as I was turning left, and it would bang the pipe into the ground. And then if I would to street ride the bike, if I had any kind of speed going into a left-hand corner, and had to lean just a little too far, it would actually scrape the pipe, and it just wasn't safe. And everything's rigid mounted, so the harder I keep hitting the exhaust on the ground, the more likely it is to either crack the header. That's all tied to the, you know, the exhaust is mounted to the turbo, that's mounted to the header, that's bolted to the head. You know, it's a whole chain reaction thing that could happen if I bang that thing into the ground hard enough. So I decided to do that little slash cut and got rid of the exhaust, lost a little bit of weight too, but I unintentionally fucked up. Not bad, but it took me a little bit to figure out what I did. And right after I did it, I knew what I did. That make any sense? No, probably not. Anyways, I figured out what I did shortly after I did it. Maybe that's a better way to put it. But I'll show you what I got going on here and then what I'm going to change. So as you can see, the exhaust it isn't exactly the same as it was before I did the slash cut, or basically since I did the slash cut. But I did this kind of temporary. This was a leftover scrap piece I had. It was kind of sort of an elbow there. I kind of welded it all back together where the banana cut was. And it's not pretty there because the shit didn't really fit well together. But this was a scrap piece I put back on to prove something. My oxygen sensor is back in here. The slash cut was right here. Well, I believe what happened was after I made that cut, I noticed when I would fire the bike up, my O2 correction was just going off the charts. It would go 50% rich, and it was still only, it would only get to 14.4 air-fuel ratio, and the target was 12.2. Well, my compensation, I had it capped out at 50%. It wasn't allowed to correct any more than that. There's a whole another story behind compensation percentage and stuff, and I changed a few things there, but it shouldn't have to correct 50% at any part of the base map to make the thing idle or run at any other part of the map. So normally on a pass, my correction factor is about 3% from start to finish. That's pretty good. That means if the O2 sensor ever goes bad and fails, the bike is still close enough on the base map to run with no correction going on. The problem with this is that I think my oxygen sensor was so close to where I did the slash cut that it was mixing with outside air and reading lean when it really wasn't. So it was adding a shit ton of fuel to the base map, even though it didn't need it. It was just because the oxygen sensor wasn't reading right. So I welded this scrap piece of metal on here to kind of reduplicate the exhaust I had in the first place when I tuned the bike. And sure shit, after I put this back on, all of a sudden my O2 correction is back to like 1% at idle, where it was off 50%, and it wouldn't maintain the proper air fuel I had it set for. Now it idles right back at 12.2, and 1, maybe 2% correction factor at idle. So just add in that exhaust from where the O2 sensor was fixed what my problem was. I didn't think that through when I cut it the first time. I was just worried about clearance and ground clearance and stuff. So now we're going to get rid of all this stainless stuff, which, stainless bad, heavy. And I'm going to try something different. We're going aluminum. So I'm going to build a duplicate of basically my first exhaust setup, but I'll change the angle so it won't hit the ground this time. But I got my aluminum exhaust, I got my aluminum O2 bone, and aluminum V-band. So we'll start making some cuts and fitting some things, and I'll see how far I get with mock-up today. I don't have a welder out here to do aluminum, so I'll have to mark my joints and then tape everything together. I'll take it to work and I'll tack things, then come back out here, fit it, see how the fit is, if I got to change anything, remark, change, whatever, then go back to my work, tack it, come back out here, fit it again, and then if everything's good, I'll go back and finish weld it. So that'll be my plan for the weekend. That other project I was talking about, that's kind of taking up my time. This is just my break from that right now. I'm kind of in a holding pattern on that deal. So I got a little bit of free time this weekend. Trying not to spend too much money. No real racing of any importance coming up other than the MKE Real Street Takeover again coming up like second weekend in October, I think it is. I don't remember the actual date. But that's the only race I'm planning on making. So things are going to slow down as far as projects go or racing, but I'll still find stuff to tinker with. So let's get going on mocking up the aluminum exhaust setup. So I just weighed this real quick. This would basically be a duplicate of, you know, the exhaust that was on the bike originally. It was 2 pounds 14 ounces. This whole bend I'm starting with in the aluminum, 1 pound 7 ounces. So it's already going to be lighter. Not that, yeah, I am doing this for weight, and I think aluminum is cool to work with. So it's going to be a little bit lighter than that. So first thing I got to do is coming right off the turbo, I need at least a little bit of a bend. Show it this way, a little bit of a bend in here somewhere to come off the turbo, and then it's going to come down right away. So I'll use a little bit of segment here, and I'll use this straight to come down and away. So instead of cutting all this and cutting a pie out of here, I'm going to leave this leg intact and then get the angle that I need, and then I'll shorten this up as I need to bring the exhaust up and in closer to the side of the bike. So first thing I'm going to do is I need a good line to cut on so I'm not chasing gaps this whole time. So I'll take a hose clamp, and then I think I want to go, we'll start probably right in there for a bend. So I'll clamp the hose clamp down, and now that clamp just centered itself on that radius. So now I can draw a line all the way around. Pull the clamp back off. Now I got a straight line to cut all the way around to make sure it'll be flat. So when I put that up to the V-band on the turbo, I won't have a big gap I got to fill when I weld it. Okay, so here's what I got going on. I already took and spared you the time wasted of watching me just use a cutoff wheel to cut some tubing. But I got my pieces cut that I'm going to use, and the aluminum V-band's already clamped into the turbo, so I can stick stuff in here and kind of start fitting how I want things to go. What I'm trying to do is I want the exhaust to come out and hug as close to about where this bolt is as I can, because that'll keep it up above the bottom of the oil pan and in farther than the old style that used to hit. And the direction, this direction is what my interference problem was when I would turn. So if I could just get the whole exhaust to go that way a little bit, I'll not have any issues with it hitting the ground again. So what I did is I cut one little elbow. This was just a guess. I knew I needed a bend to start coming off the turbo. So that's what I started with. So that'll go up into the flange there. Now, I'm not marking anything just yet, and this is going to be kind of a pain in the ass to do. So the second piece was also mostly a guess. Kind of measured out a little bit of what I needed, roughly on the thicker side down here, about how long across that needed to be. So what I'm doing is having it come off the turbo, and then as long as I have this piece, and I got the actual tail, I was gonna call it tailpipe, the actual pipe itself has a little bit of a angle on there, I can clock all this stuff based on where this piece goes, which gives me a bunch of adjustability with minimal cuts and a little bit of guessing to kind of swivel everything and get it where I want it to be. So that'll be something like that. And this will sit something like that. And then if I clock everything just right, I end up with the exhaust sitting just about perfect where I wanted it. Now I can actually tuck it in a little farther yet. It'll be about like that. Actually, we'll tweak it right there. That looks a little better. So that's about how it'll be. And then at the end, down here, I'm actually going to have a little bit of a turnout now. This is pointed directly at my foot. When I'm on the two-step on the starting line, my left foot is kind of up here around the exhaust, so this doesn't throw any flames at me. But going down track, my foot peg is like right back here. This exhaust will be blowing on my foot. Similar to how it was previous, it didn't really cause an issue. But my big thing now is I want to turn it out a little bit, because the starting line at our local track is getting out of hand. And there's some dickbags that like to get over my shoulder and see what I'm doing. So if I have the exhaust pointing to the side, shooting flames, that'll keep them back about 3-4 feet. So I like that idea. So what I did here is I went ahead, and this tape is like super nice for mocking stuff up. This V-band flange has a register in there that this elbow is actually recessed into. So I bottomed that out and then taped it, and this is actually a pretty sturdy little tape joint. But now this will let me kind of save time down the road here on this project, because I got to run back and forth between work and the garage, between fitting and welding, because I don't have the welder out here. But now I can put this on the turbo, get it situated, and I can get this next piece and this piece taped into place and at least marked to where I can go to my work, use the TIG welder, and tack everything in one trip, and then come back out here and see how it fits. If it's all good, then I can go back and do a final welds. So I'm just trying to save some running around. It's kind of how I did the last setup. So we'll just get this all kind of mocked up and fit, and see what we got to work with. So there it is, all mocked up. Now I'll take this to work, and wherever there's tape, I can just make little slits, and those will be my tack welds, so I don't totally lose the overall shape that I'm going for here. And then once it's all tack welded, I'll pull the tape off, Scotch-Brite her all up, and then I'll be able to weld it. But after if I tack it, I'll come back out here and make sure it fits good. But this turned out nice. I like how this looks. Kind of tucked up in there nice and tight. I think it'll be fine. We'll call this exhaust the CC 2.0 for crowd control. And alakazam, it's done. I was busy this morning, but I decided after I freed up there, I was going to run to work. This was all taped together sitting in the back seat of my truck. So after I got done doing what I was doing, I ran to my work and I started tacking everything together and realized that all my joints were like pretty good fit to start with, that if I just welded on my lines, I'd save myself some time and just do it all in one shot. except I forgot my O2 bung. So my original plan was to tape everything up, go to work, tack it up, come back out here, check the fit, and then put that in, and then go back and finish weld everything. I just forgot that, and I figured with the way this exhaust runs, that joints moving with the heat and stuff, it really wasn't going to be as big of a deal as you might think, because this thing can go up or down, in or out, and it would be fine. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on and figure out where I'm going to put the O2 sensor, and then I'll run back to work and weld that in, and then everything will go on for good. So here's what I landed on for O2 sensor. It's going to go right back in here. Right down there under that oil line in front of the oil pan. Straight over, 90 degrees. Just like that. So the old Unibit for the win. I was actually kind of curious of how I was going to get a hole big enough for that bung to go in there. And see if I can set this up. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, right in like that. Now I'll go to work and weld it up. So that went better than I thought it was going to go. I'm just not real good at this stuff, so that'll work though. So the last thing I wanted to do was, I was talking about how much weight difference there was between the stainless and aluminum. Never mind the two O2 things going on here. This was yeah, I had to make some shit work to put things back to how they were. But I'm gonna weigh these things. So this one, I gotta kind of balance it with one hand here just so it doesn't tip over, but kind of get it in the spot here where I can steady it. There. So we got 2 pounds, 14 ounces. Now the aluminum one, steady that the same way, just holding it still. 1 pound, about 6 ounces. So at least a pound difference. I'll take it. So far I've taken about 15 pounds of weight off the bike since the last time I ran it. So I'm going to go ahead and run the O2 sensor in, and then mount the sucker up. I had an O2 plug in the bung when I welded it up, keep the threads from distorting. I wasn't sure how much heat I was going to put into this thing. So we'll get this started. And with any luck, everything will go into place here. About there. That's it. I just got to take and run this back up to the top and plug it in. And I'll fire it up. Like how that turned out. So before I fire this thing up to double check my exhaust, basically just hear about how cool it sounds, I'm going to connect up down in here, I'm going to drill and tap that crankcase vent plate, and then I'm going to run a line from there up to sensor up here, and I'm going to set up a crankcase pressure sensor, so just kind of a way to double check, make sure everything's healthy all the time and get good data. So I'm going to go ahead and route all that real quick, and then we'll fire the bike up. So here's my crankcase breather plate. This actually is the fitting that goes to the vent tank catch can and the tail. And then this is what I just drilled and tapped this to 1/8 inch pipe thread. This is where the fitting will go, and then the hose will hook up to that, and then that'll run up to the sensor that's up in the front corner of the bike, and that'll give me crankcase pressure. So if things start going south on the motor, you know, ring seal, hole in the piston, whatever, it'll pick it up on that sensor, and just another way for me to kind of monitor the health of the motor. So yeah, I gotta set up the ECU to acknowledge that sensor, change the names of a few things, but should work. So there it is, hooked up and routed. So now I'm going to just zip tie a few things in place, and then we'll fire this thing up. There it is. I really like how that turned out. O2's down in there, out of the way. Dump pipe, I'm gonna actually, or the wastegate dump, I'm actually gonna redo that in aluminum as well. It's only, you know, that long. It just comes out flush to the side of the fairings. But overall, I like how that turned out. I'm gonna call that good. Never stop upgrading, I guess. Always something new, something different. So it should be lighter, and it I'll say faster, but we all know it never goes any faster. So that's it for now. Stay tuned for the next project.